Hello and welcome to It's About Youth. I'm Soraya Mia. Now, amidst the success of over 11,100 students who scored all A's in their SPM exams, 75% of the total 373,525 candidates are left in the shadows, grappling with low grades or outright failure. Now, we discuss the results, what it means, measures and interventions to ensure a brighter future for the future human resources that our country desperately needs. With our guest today, Bernard Au, Program Director for PEMIMPIN GSL, as well as Mohammad Rafiq, Shahmie, Mohammad Suhaimi from EDUKO. Thank you so much for joining us in this episode.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, so let's begin this conversation with Bernard. A vast majority, or approximately 75%, as I mentioned earlier, barely made the cut with at least one fail or just enough to pass. Now, what do these results show us?
Sure. I think, please allow me to paint the picture with a few data points, just so that we are looking at this at a more fair perspective, right? So first of all, just now, what you said about the 75% barely passed or failed one subject or failed all subjects, it is true. But compared to last year the data was 77%. So this year, we reduced that by 2%. So there's a slight improvement over there. I also want to highlight that the grade Mata Purata National went down. And this grade, if the score goes down, it means it's doing better. And this score went from 4.7% to 4.6%, which also a very positive thing. And finally, there's also on the data that says Peratus dapat sijil SPM increased from 92% to 93% this year, so 1% increase. So I think, to be fair, I feel like there are things to be celebrated about this year's SPM. And I also know a lot of teachers and school leaders who have worked really hard for this to happen. So I just want to acknowledge that at the start and acknowledge that the great work that teachers have done on the ground. But obviously there are still room for improvement, and hence why, I think that's why we are here to talk about how we can make things better, right? So I think this group is obviously still very big, and despite the multiple interventions that has been done, it's still not enough. So I think if I were to just kick it off by saying perhaps if there are things that we can focus on after this, it would be starting with providing continuous professional development for teachers, specifically in differentiated instructions. Because I think from the latest World Bank report, from what I read, the amount of differentiated training that's given to our teachers is much lesser compared to our neighbors, for example, in Vietnam. So if this area is not managed well, in a class with different abilities, students with different abilities, it would be difficult for teachers to cater to their individual needs. So I think that's where I want to start with.
Okay, it's great that you pointed out that in the beginning, but of course we're back to the results, right? You've definitely mentioned that it's not entirely bad, right? But then that vast majority, or 75%, it's just, we cannot leave any student behind. And we also see like there's a disparity with students who are scoring, really high, and then there's also those who are probably, who even not made it for the exams. About what, 10,000 who didn't even make it to the exams. Rafiq, maybe you would like to explain what are the factors of the disparity?
Right. So the factors that affecting the disparity between these, I think mostly it's the main thing is about class issue actually, because I feel from Asian Journal of University of Education, produced by UiTM 2022 by Malika Vasugi. It mentions that factors affecting the low scores of students is first parents' encouragement or involvement in the education, teachers, such as what Bernard mentioned, their environment, socio-economic factors, and also their motivation. So these four things are what affecting, what I would say factors affecting the progress or the achievement of the students. We can see that people with parents' encouragement, people with high the motivation, that have support from their teachers in private schools, they don't have these problems because they still will achieve good marks, excellent marks. But people who don't have this kind of support and structures for them, this is where it will affect their marks actually. So I feel this disparity can be seen more as a class issue, where people who don't have these factors for them, these support structures, will mainly be falling behind in their studies.
That's a very good point, and I absolutely agree to what you said. Encouragement by, starts at home, by family, by parents, and then also by teachers. I guess that definitely makes a change. Now, perhaps there's also, for sure, like you mentioned earlier, gaps in the education system. Bernard, maybe you would like to give your thoughts on this. What do you think are the gaps in our education system that probably could be addressed?
Sure. I think I want to maybe also quote a few things from a few report, right? And this is, I will quote the latest World Bank report called Bending Bamboo Shoots. And they talk about how, issues in education at SPM didn't just happen at SPM level, it happened throughout the years, right? And I think the earlier points would be, for example, 40% of students cannot read and write at their grade level at 10 years old. And for me, when I saw that, it is very shocking. And if at 10 years old you cannot really handle literacy issues already, how do you expect them to handle a major exam like SPM, right? So I feel like we have to go down to solve the issue earlier before it becomes really severe. And one of the places that we can start is improving or strengthening the basic literacy and numeracy skills so that students can progress and graduate, hopefully, at the SPM level.
So this is probably in like early childhood education?
Early childhood and also primary school education. Yeah, I think before they enter secondary school, we have to make sure the foundation of literacy and numeracy is very strong already so that it doesn't gets more serious after that in high school.
Yep, I understand. And there's also a lot of, awareness about dyslexia nowadays.
Yep.
And I feel like awareness is very important.
Correct.
It's not like something that like example, if a child is dyslexic, it doesn't mean that they cannot excel in their studies. But
Correct.
also we see some parents who deny this, and then
Yes.
it just makes things worse
Yeah,
for their children. Something to definitely look into. Now, what are the long-term implications you think of, students who achieve minimal in examinations? Maybe you'd like to.
For me, you have to look in the long-term position. We can look at how Japan does their education system. For example, they have a mandatory school age until Form 5, equivalent to us Form 5. So meaning that students or youth have to stay in school until they are around that age. Because in Malaysia, what I notice is that there have been talks about policy changes about mandatory schooling age, but right now it's still until 12 years old. So it's not compulsory or it's not mandatory for students to actually stay inside school from 12 years old until 17 years old.
Sorry, when you say mandatory, what does it mean, like if they drop out?
Meaning that they have to get back into the system.
Like by law, they have to be there. If not,
They
the
have to
parents
be.
will be.
Something would happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that is one of the changes, I think, policy-wise that we can do if you look at Japan. Also, long-term implication is obviously on the socio-economical side. We have to know why do these people actually drop out. Socio-economic status, they don't have enough earnings at home, they have to support their families. So these are the, things that are plaguing them more than their education. You cannot focus, students, especially youth, cannot focus on their education if they are having other things going on at home. They have to feed their children, they have to feed their brothers and sisters. So it's not really a good thing if we have these socio-economic problems. But I will say that Malaysia is very accommodating on the socio-economic side, on the upward mobility scale, because we provide part-time works, we provide gig works for these people. So it's not that they are out of option if they drop out of school. Like they just become what Japanese people would say need, not employed, not training, and not in education. So these people, even if they're not in education, they are employed. They are providing in the economy. Of course, that is a short-term solution to this problem. We need to have a longer-term solution, I think, from the government side.
Mm-hmm. Maybe you would like to add into that?
Sure. I think maybe policy-wise, I'm not the expert on here, but I think there are a few things that we can definitely strengthen. And I want to go back to perhaps the gaps a little bit just to highlight why is this initiative important. So based on another survey called the Post SPM Decision Making Survey in 2023 made by FinCo, so they talk about how 88% of students are unable to identify 2 next steps they need to do to plan their career beyond the SPM. So I think this shows us that they are not really sure what to do beyond SPM, and perhaps that it's because of the lack of direction. They are not too sure why is this SPM important at all. Like, where can this bring me, right? What is the point of doing this? And perhaps that's something that we need to highlight a bit more. I understand that in school we have the bimbingan and counseling, the counseling teacher who is already doing this, but I think the capacity on their end is also very, very little, right? There's only one counseling teacher to 500 students in our government school. So I think in this area, if you can strengthen that a bit more with collaborations of NGO, for example, to highlight what are the career options after SPM, open their eyes and let them see the world. I think that will really motivate them to focus on exam as well. Yep.
I like that point as well, to give them a bigger picture. It's not that there aren't any measures for that now that we see, like science stream, art stream, all of that. I guess it's just a bigger picture, but I feel it's more personalized when an individual tells you or to guide you, because especially when it's lacking at home.
Yeah.
Right? But before we get more into this discussion, we're going to go for a quick break. We'll be right back with more. Hello and welcome back to It's About Youth. I'm Saraya Mia and I am speaking with Bernard Au from PEMIMPIN GSL, as well as Mohammad, Rafiq, Shahmie, Mohammad Shahmie from EDUKO. We were discussing more on measures and interventions and how to ensure, brighter future for our future generation. But I'd like to get into, government interventions and government policies. Let's begin with you, Rafiq. How do you think, the education policies can be reformed to address the needs of the many students who don't achieve top grades?
So I think main thing that I want to push or want to tell what the government should pursue, and I think they are also pursuing this, because from what I've seen on research and articles, they mention many times actually about raising mandatory schooling age for the students. So I think this is one of the avenues that if you want to keep students in school, if you want schools to be one of the hub for the students to actually develop and enrich themselves, this is one of the steps that I think needed to do. I think we also need to acknowledge the current measures that have been done by the government. Is first, students who drop out from school actually are being tracked. I mean, they are being contacted. They are not being just let loose like that outside. So government, specifically Ministry of Education, do track these students and also ask them, what do you want to do after this? Do you actually have a plan? And they introduce plans like TVET if you want to enter vocational, or if you want to enter diploma, or other avenues that you want to enter, STPM. So government does track and measure, record these students who drop out, because they all have the records of the students who drop out. So that is one of the measures. Also right now, major promotion on TVET, STPM, and also other avenues that people can take. Not just degree, not just the foundation pathway that people can take, but also other pathway that these students can also take to enrich themselves other than education. So I think that is the current measures that the government are taking. Future-wise, I think immediately should about the mandatory schooling age, which is very important.
Mandatory schooling age until at least Form 5.
Yes.
Right. Now, since you mentioned about TVET or TVET, right, now it's like a whole big thing that the government is pushing, and there's definitely going to be a lot of opportunities for students who actually, enroll in this. Would you like to add a little bit on your thoughts on this?
Right, you mean on the TVET issue, right? So I think for me, I believe it's the right direction forward, because not everyone wants to go on the sort of science stream route or the art stream route. Some of us are better in hands-on sort of career and jobs, right? So I think we should definitely push for that. At the same time, I think I also want to share some anecdotal experiences when I hear from TVET teachers is that there's not enough placement. There's a lot of interest, but not enough spots for students to enter. So I wish I can get a data on this, but I don't have right now. But if this is the case, we need to really look into how we can spend a bit more budget, hire more teachers so that the TVET schools have enough spots for these kind of kids, right, who are interested in, this line of work. So I believe it's the right direction. And I think on top of that, just now you asked for what are some of the policies that perhaps we can push for. I wouldn't call it a policy, but perhaps things that we could improve on is definitely professional development for teachers. And I want to highlight again, it's on the differentiated instructions and perhaps skills to identify students with special needs. So not every teacher is equipped with the skills to identify that among a room of 50 kids, right? So if we cannot identify at an earlier age, right, that issue will only get worse throughout. And I want to highlight and emphasize again, our training on this bit, differentiated learning and special needs education, is 50% lesser than our Vietnam counterpart, our neighbor. So perhaps if that's something that we can invest a bit more money, I think we will be able to improve in this aspect,
The differentiated testing or
differentiated learning in a way that you could teach in a way that different students with different abilities, different levels could learn at the same time. So what I find as a teacher, what I often see is that it is often easier just to teach at one level. So the way you give instruction, the way you give homework is only for one grade level. But in reality, students are not like that, right? We are all different. So even when you give homework, for example, you need to give something that's a little bit simpler for students who are just catching up and a little bit challenging for students that are already very good so that they feel motivated and continue learning as well. So this is a skill that continuously needs to be honed and so that teachers can support the students better, no matter the level.
Yep, great point. Now, also with the rise of AI and technology, technological advancements, how can perhaps the government leverage on this to ensure that they can help the struggling students?
I feel like AI, or we can say LLM, large language models, can help on the planning side, organizational side, and also data side. I feel like AI can help to determine specifically the level of the students, what grade are they actually performing on, how are they understanding the materials, because I feel like AI could enhance the experience of learning further actually, if used correctly. And also it can help teachers with organizing their planning on how to teach the students, also class materials. AI can help you to generate that, but the source needs to come from you, the teachers themselves. But also, I feel like if we use this AI widespreadly inside the government apparatus, the schools, we have the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Higher Education even, I feel like if it's integrated properly, we can use AI efficiently to, help on the organizational side and also on the data side. Because we manage students is a lot of numbers. Yeah. When you deal with a lot of students, people, not just students, but you tend to treat data as just numbers. But sometimes it's people. Not sometimes, most of the time it's people. You're dealing with people's lives, people grades. So this is how you can emphasize with people by using AI to accurately and detail look at the grades and how they're performing. Are they actually dropping out? What are they having at home? What kind of problems are they having? So these things can be identified accurately, and I think in a shorter amount of time if we use AI.
Absolutely. However, there's also the fears of costs and all of that. But of course, it takes investment.
It's it's going to be costly.
Yep.
Of course. But it's necessary.
Sorry, it's necessary. And it's definitely crucial in the near future, because if we don't invest into, leveraging on the use of AI, then perhaps we're going to be really far back compared to our neighbor countries. Now, let's talk more about alternative pathways for, students who perhaps education is just not at all their thing. Bernard, would you like to highlight a little bit about, other alternative pathways that can be created for the students who do not excel in traditional exams?
Sure. And just now we already talked about TVET, so I think that's definitely something that we should pursue and create more opportunities for them to learn. And I think besides that, let's just say if these students, they didn't do so well in the exam, right? Perhaps if we can come up with short courses that can help them to, you know, upskill after Form 5, I think that would be ideal. Because a lot of times, what we end up doing is not what we studied in, be it secondary school or tertiary school, right? So if there are short courses, for example, in the area of digital marketing or in the area of data analysts, and there are a lot of jobs like this coming up. And if you can invest a bit of money in this area, creating these pockets of opportunities, it will mean a lot for them so that they can start anew. Even though they didn't do so well last year, they can still do good in this kind of exams and, you know, find a better job that pays better.
So short courses are actually quite effective, yeah?
I would think so, yeah.
All right. Now we have about just like 3 to 4 minutes left now. There's also a rising trend that we see among younger or the youth that are probably look at exams a little bit different than, you know, the traditional generation or even our generation, like where our parents are like, you have to get at least, you know, some whatever A's. But then now it's like, oh, it's okay, you can just get as long as you pass, blah, blah, blah. It's not to say that it's wrong, but what do you think about this trend?
Mostly, I think it's generational. People like us or our age have been married and have their kids, or maybe people older than us, and they don't want the student to face the same stress, the same amount of, you know, things that we have been going through, pressure. Imagine it's very tiring actually when you, from 7 years old until you're 17, you face many exams. Every year is a different exam. Every year is a different preparation for a new exam. It's very tiring. And I think the parents or the generation like us is not burdening the new generation on it. Meaning that you can score if this is what you do, this is what you want to do, but this is not exactly be all and end all. This is not exactly the end game for you. So I feel generationally that is what's happening right now. It's not that exams are becoming less and more important, but I feel like the frequency of exams have been lessened. We have no more PT3, PSR. So I feel like the way forward for us is to adapt to this generational change by maybe we can take the USA approach by having SAT for national examination, or Japanese approach where each university have their own special entrance examination. So people who actually wants to enter this university, they have another examination that they have to do. But before that, schools is just schools. It's not exams.
Can I add to that?
Of course.
Yeah, so I think I'm actually okay if we are not focused on the A's, but we need to be focused on learning. I think if you are not getting A's as your main goal, I think that's fine, but you cannot let go of learning, you cannot let go of studies. And I think when I see some of these things coming out online saying, oh, education is not important, I disagree. It is very important, and being able to articulate the thoughts in a very clear, very concise manner, it is a skill and it's very much needed no matter where you go, no matter what you do. Even you're a business owner, you don't end up working for someone, you still need to articulate thoughts, market your ideas, sell your ideas. So I think education is still very important, but if you don't get all A's in, if that's not your focus, that's okay, right? And I think if, we're all Asians here, right? And we know how Asians really prioritize the A's. If we can focus a little bit less on the A's and more on the learning, it is a good direction forward. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that point and agree to that, because sometimes we look at A's and then we're just like, oh, we need to make sure that our children or we achieve that A, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they understand what they are learning. You know, and then we also have this thing where people memorize. So I like that. It's not always about scoring, but it's definitely about learning. Now, we have just 1 minute left. Would you like to add anything?
I feel adding to my previous points that I've made, it's good and it's not good. I mean, it's okay for students to not performing education-wise, but it's good to make them be engaged in society. We cannot, even though they are school dropouts, even though they are not performing really well in schools, but at least socially, we engage with them. We still need to see them, approach them, and talk to them, and also not treat them as an outcast. That is the main important thing that I feel, because these students, sometimes they drop out not because of their own volition, socioeconomic factors also.
Absolutely. That's a great way to end the show. Now, both of your thoughts combined, I feel is very, very important for us to know. Education is definitely important. However, if you fail in exams, if you fail in school, it does not mean that you're an outcast or that, you know, you are going to be left out in society. There's always alternative pathways. But whatever it is, make sure that we try our best. Now, that's all for today's episode. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining once again. And thanks, everyone, for watching. I'm Shahmie, and we'll see you again.